This conference will now be recorded.
We're ready. Thank you. Regular meeting time, 9:30, October 16th. This is time for opportunity for public comment. Anybody signed in, Anita?
We have 8 individuals online and no one has requested to make a public comment.
I'm sorry, no public comment online? No public comment online. Okay, nobody in here. Move on to item 3, which is an action item regarding approval of minutes from September 18th. It's page 8 to 11 in your packet. Any questions or comments about the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I'm sorry, you haven't. Okay, not a comment, a move to approve. Second, we have a third approval and a second. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? I don't know. I will. Thank you. Move on to item 4. Discussion and action item regarding approval of minutes to the FY 25-28 Transportation Improvement Plan TIP and 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP for projects. These are on page 14 through 20 in your packet. Callie, you're our presenter.
All right, so we've got 11 new projects that we're adding to the TIP, and we presented these last month. Those are the ones that were selected back in May for the funding, and then we have 4 that are getting amended that are already in our TIP, and those are due to like let date changes, funding revisions, limit adjustments, things like that. We also had 3 projects that were selected for funding. They were Cat 2, but they are not able to be added to the TIP this amendment. Where when they get added to the UTP, hopefully in August of next year, we'll be able to add those to the TIP, but currently we're not able to. And then we have completed our public engagement section for this amendment. And for more information on that, I'll give that over to Anita.
Thank you, Callie. We hosted several public engagement events. 2 were pop-ups, 3 were meetings, and 1 was a Facebook online survey. Something different that we did for the pop-ups is we gave participants at the Senior Citizen Expo and the Helping Hands Ministry of Belton, we provided them with a $5 HEB gift card or a $5 hub punch card as an incentive to garner high quality responses. And so I felt like that really turned out well, but also I believe that those individuals probably would have responded to the survey anyways without that support. And one of the things that we learned at the first pop-up in Belton at the Senior Citizen Expo is that everyone in attendance really wanted to know about roadways in their area. They looked at the maps and then they wanted to find out where they lived and what was being done about the roads in their area. So we adjusted our survey for the balance of the public comment period and included that into the area. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so the first survey question, we asked individuals what modes of transportation do they use regularly, and the majority of the individuals selected they drive their personal vehicle, and no person out of this survey response selected walking. Next slide, please. Out of the 42 total respondents that participated in the survey, 26 reported using Chaparral Road. On the survey selection, we asked them to select the most frequently used roads, and we only gave them 1 option because otherwise with all these amendments, there would be too many options to sort through the data. So 26% said that they use Chaparral Road, and then we also had the write-in question. And those write-in questions, we moved all those write-in questions about where they traveled or what was important to them. We moved that to the public comment blog, which is at the end of our agenda items. Can you move to the next slide, please? Oops. Thank you. And that covers the public engagement. If y'all have any questions, please let me know.
You have one opposition to Georgetown Road Trail Phase 2. They didn't comment with that? Or?
No, but I have their email address and time constraint did not allow me to reach out to them. But I am going to reach out to them and do that.
If you would also make certain that Jason
Yeah, let me know.
knowledge of that public comment individual, because it may be somebody that Jason has talked with about that project also.
Yes, ma'am. And Jason, did you have a question?
No, I said just like, as long as it keep me in the loop. It's probably a mutual friend of ours.
Depending on what the response was.
Suspects. Jason, you still making friends and influencing people?
I'm a ray of sunshine.
And I are correct about our possibility. Jason's gonna throw me under the first bus and get five for eventually getting past it out with him.
Anymore, we're microtransit.
So, Callie, I have a question for you. Did I hear you correctly when you said we had 2 new projects that were funded, but won't be on the UTP until August?
Yeah, they were selected for, it's 3 of them, and they're selected for funding back in May, but they were not added to the UTP this, one, so for this year, so for next year, when they are added, we'll be able to add them to our TIP.
Okay, so that means funds are available for them, correct?
I can jump in here. So those 3 projects were funded with category 2, which TxDOT TPP is really, those projects, category 2 projects are specifically listed in the UTP, and you have to match that plan with, like, our TIP has to match that plan for that specific funding category. And because we selected them in May, that was after when Victor and his team submits those projects into the process to get it to this year's UTP. And so it was just a timing thing where the funding is there and we're gonna get it sorted out.
We're not delaying any other category 2 projects that could be funded now that are on the UTP to wait another year to get more done.
I don't believe so, and there's no other category 2 projects ready.
There's not, we're not, okay.
And the let date for those, we put through the
Still
proposal
later,
list, was after that appointment to UTP anyway.
Right, yeah, like you said, our deadline for UTP was a few months before we finished that project all in. So basically, any excess category 2 funds that was not allocated to the project, we just put on the I-35 project. The next cycle, we can pull those back out, those projects.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have a question. If on the prior slides that were showing the bar graphs. No. Yes. It may be early in the morning, not enough caffeine, but is that supposed to be a percentage across the bottom?
No, those are actual numbers.
Actual numbers?
Yes, actual respondents. We had 42 responses.
Okay, that helps me. Then the combination of vehicle and I drive my personal vehicle, it's not easy to determine, like, well, help me understand the combo vehicle bike walk.
On this particular survey question, it was multiple choice. So they could choose, I use my personal vehicle, I bike, and I walk.
Okay.
They use,
So some portion of the combo can also be attributable to the bottom, because they could have chosen that as well.
well, I counted out the personal vehicle individually, and then if they selected vehicle, bike, and walk all together, those were lumped together.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? If not, do we have a motion to approve item 4?
Motion to approve the amendments for FY 25-28 transportation tip and the 2050.
Second.
Motion and a second. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? In favor carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, discussion and action item regarding approval of resolution 2024-09, adopting a public safety commitment for the Central Texas region. These are on page 22 through 24 in your packet, and James, we turn this over to you.
Thank you. This draft resolution was, I mentioned it briefly last meeting when, after Dan gave his presentation on the updated SS4A project listing. The resolution is included in your packet. This is a required component of the comprehensive safety action plan that we're developing. There needs to be a commitment to significantly reduce fatalities and serious injuries by ambitious percentage, I think is how they term it, or target zero by aggressive is probably better. Anyways, this is a requirement. We are recommending in the resolution to reduce roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 50% from present levels by the year 2050. That target does not.
Geez, is that ambitious or aggressive?
Ambitiously aggressive. Or aggressively ambitious, whichever which one you want to. Yes.
That target does not conflict with the previous safety target setting resolutions, the annual ones that we do, and we'll continue to ensure that those ones that we set annually, they are in line with this overall 50% reduction in those numbers. That's all I really have, unless there are questions on the resolution.
How did you come up with 50%?
So we looked, staff started to look at what we had determined at the beginning of this year with our annual target, which was I believe a 25% reduction in the trend line over the next 4 years, and that basically would end up making us plateau because we're going in the wrong direction right now. And so the short-term ones are more focused on the trends, but for the long-range one, 50%, the total numbers are like 100, 120 something, and so 50% of that would be 60. And I think we originally thought about 60, and that just seemed a little too much based on kind of where we were and where we're headed. And so 50% seemed like that. Close to the
So there was a little imaginary, it's not scientific.
It's not.
Because you're getting a law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, and if you look at the raw numbers, our numbers aren't, and we've talked about this in depth, our raw numbers are not super high, so 50% is not a crazy number of reductions, but it is half of where we're at right now. And I think this is something that we could take a look at, as we do a better job as staff at tracking numbers and annually setting our own targets. We look at this to see if it's realistic or realistically ambitious, or if it's pie in the sky.
This resolution is required for SS4A grant application, and everything in this resolution meets the requirements.
Yeah, the 50% reduction, you either have to do a percentage reduction, or a target of 0. And we felt like 0, based on previous discussions, wasn't really something we could recommend as staff, but a reduction of this nature is good.
Is there any punitive repercussions of not achieving the goal?
No. I think in my opinion, the Federal Highway Administration, they just want to see that there are public officials talking about this and committing to, hey, this is an issue and we want to reduce it. And maybe it doesn't turn out the way we think it is, but we're going to do what we can to try and get towards a goal and not just say, oh, we're going to work towards it and maybe we get there, maybe we don't.
As long as the feds understand that while this may be an aggressive goal, that it will absolutely not happen if they don't give us money to do what we want to do, but we're going to blame it all on them.
That's my concern, is I just don't want somebody coming back and saying, well, you didn't achieve your goals.
No,
Is that number of accidents or percentage of population?
it's number of crashes that resulted in a fatality.
Total population while we cut the total accidents.
Does that include disoriented person trying to cross the highway and being hit? So it's not just crashes, it's fatalities, period.
Yeah, and that would count as a crash.
As a crash.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you're a pedestrian, if there's a vehicle involved
It's a
somehow,
crash.
vehicle, bicycle, vehicle, pedestrian, it's a crash.
Any more comment or beyond?
Okay, beat the horse, so I move to approve 2024.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second on this item. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Move on to item 6, discussion regarding the presentation on the draft safety action plan. This is on page 26 through 33 in your packet. James, you again.
I'm gonna try and stumble through this. This is Dan's presentation. He couldn't be here today, but if you'd like to listen to him present, he will be at the executive committee next week, and you can hear the whole presentation. I will go through the slides that he provided. This is an update on the development schedule. You can see we're there in October, and we actually, staff received the draft plan last Friday from Killeen-Temple. I think they did, for first draft, they did a great job. We're doing an internal review and looking at any kind of major issues for them to address before it goes out for public comment in November and December. And then we're looking at having a final plan done by the end of January, and it'll likely be coming to the board for approval in February. So here are the required components of a safety action plan. That leadership, commitment, and goal setting is what we just talked about with the previous resolution. There needs to be some sort of planning structure or advisory committee. We have the safety task force, some data analysis, lots of public engagement, collaboration, equity considerations, which Miller mentioned last time, the funding, some policy and process changes, and that's recommendations for those, a selection of projects or strategies to meet our safety goals, and then progress and transparency, reporting, continued data collection and reporting.
How do you feel, and maybe you just don't know, the safety plan is supposed to be completed, I believe, by 2025, that schedule, January? And we're heading into the holiday season. Feel like we're on target to hit that date? Yeah.
So here's the outline of the plan. There are eight sections, and each section is tied to one or more of those safety action plan required components. And start with the background, and then focus on the regional roadway safety vision, and then goes into data analysis, public engagement, the different policies and strategies that are being recommended that we want to implement as a region, project selection process, and the high priority projects that were identified. There's a chapter that goes through each of the different counties, and for the counties that have large cities, there's sections for each city with their specific action plans, and then looking ahead to implementation. So the first chapter with the background has the program overview, an overview of our region and how the plan is developed. And this talks about the safety task force, which is the planning structure required component. Chapter 2 has the regional policy commitment discussion, that resolution that we just adopted, that will be included in there. Talk about the safe system approach, which I know Dan has mentioned, and it's kind of the basis for a lot of this. And then look at the 6 goals, safety action plan goals. And a lot of these are very similar to some of the different components, trying to align with what SS4A program is built off of. Equity focus, transparency, having a task force, and selecting projects that are impactful, things like that.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
So, the action that we just took about the 50% aggressively, what was it? The 50% reduction. So this plan helps achieve that reduction, right?
Yes, the outcomes of the plan are geared towards getting to that 50% reduction.
And so is there a schedule of these priorities on when those projects would get implemented so that they would correlate to the 50% reduction?
Not in terms of specific years. I think we do kind of organize by short, mid, long range kind of outcome strategies, what the implementation period is. And I think in chapter 8, which is the looking ahead, that talks more about the timeline and how we're gonna get, we talk about all these things, how we're gonna get there.
Yeah, because we're gonna produce metrics that we're going to adopt, trying to achieve. I think I'd like for those projections to be supported by programs and projects that will actually achieve it, rather than just saying, well, we think we can do this. So I think in the future, having the consultants like Kim Horn take a look at what constitutes an aggressive improvement. Because I would think at 25, especially if the numbers are small, to get a 50% reduction is actually harder. You might think that it's easier but statistically speaking, it's harder because you have fewer crashes that make up a larger percentage of the total. So it would be good for us to be able to say, well, 25 is actually very aggressive since we have a couple hundred crashes in the region. I just like in the future for us to have a little bit more rigor around and support you guys on developing what those metrics should be rather than just.
Yeah, and staff we did discuss with the Kim Horn team about that 50%, 60%, and Dan felt like that was in line and an appropriate, in line one with what FHWA wants, but also in line two with where we're at and officially.
Excellent, thank you.
Any more discussion or comments?
Thank you still.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I interrupted the presentation.
All good. If there's more questions, I'm happy to stop and answer questions. Chapter 3
Right.
is the data analysis chapter. There's region-wide crash analysis, safety focus areas, and there's some comparisons region-wide, the urban areas versus rural areas, and then Central Texas versus Texas overall, statewide averages and our averages. There is a high injury network, and I know Dan early on presented this, has overall crashes, the segments of roadway that have the highest rate of crashes per vehicle miles traveled. And there's also components on looking at pedestrians, bicyclists, and then some equity focused analysis. Chapter 4 or section 4 is the public and partner agency input. We detail all the engagement that we've done, all the meetings we've had, a lot with many cities in the region, counties in the region, big and small, everything in between. There's been a lot of public engagement, and this section will be with the final round of public engagement that happens after the draft plan goes out. There'll be some more added to this for that part of the engagement. Chapter 5 has the roadway safety policies and strategies. There's, I think, a list of 10 different strategies and write-ups, kind of demonstration focus that Kim Horn and the team from the conversations and engagement identified, and they wrote up. There's some that are region-wide focused, some that are focused for the urban areas, some for the rural areas, and then there's a couple that are county-specific. I think one of them is looking at a particular roadway in Milam County that's extra dangerous and it could use some specific mitigation implementation type projects to make it more safe. Chapter 6 has how we selected the safety projects, the project prioritization, because there is prioritization. I know that wasn't shared last month when we had the list, but there is a prioritization. Each project did receive a score, and there's a write-up that will be shared with the board for review. This section also includes identifying the high priority projects, top 10 in the region, and then ones that Killeen-Temple and staff identified as good candidates for SS3 implementation funding, and then also HSIP funding through the local textile districts. Chapter 7 includes, this is the county safety action plan, so it goes county by county and city by city for the larger cities in the region, and has a map of each area, and then the projects identified in that area. There's a summary table. I think this is where maybe the large 109 spreadsheet is, or maybe that's an appendix. And this also includes the county-specific strategy write-ups that were mentioned. I think they're mentioned in chapter 5, but they're included in their county-specific sections of this chapter. And then last is looking ahead at implementation. This has some guidance on how to implement the safety projects. And Raymond, to your point, looking at progress reporting, how we're going to do that, and recommendations for updating the plan on a regular basis. So as I mentioned, we received the plan on Friday, and we're doing an initial review and giving this presentation here today, and then Dan will be presenting next week at the executive committee meeting. In November and December, we plan to have public review and follow-up, as well as partner agencies and the task force. This pulse board and the executive committee will have a chance to review everything. And then in January, Killeen-Temple will take any comments received and make changes. And then February, it will come for adoption to this board unless there's a significant issue with it. And then last thing is the next steps meeting, which I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but now we have the plan. What's next? Talking about that probably with the safety task force. And that's it, yeah.
How soon would the, in November, December, you have a public review and follow-up. How soon would this be open to the public?
We're planning the first week of November. Staff this week and next week is looking for major issues, and we'll send those to Dan and his team so they can get it addressed. Next week, we have a meeting with them, and we're going to talk about the public engagement schedule. I know Anita's going to be involved with that. I think we have, Anita, is it at least four public meetings we're going to be scheduling?
Yes, 4 public meetings, I believe, 2 are going to be online.
Okay.
4 plus 2, I believe. The first one will be online, and the last one will be online, is what I believe.
And if we need to have more, we could have more. But yeah, that's a plan right now.
Thanks.
Any more questions or comments or discussion?
I'll throw it in. I think this is probably the most appropriate area to address it. Connell County requested an outbrief. We got the big no last month. And so that occurred this morning at 8:30. Obviously, I was not able to attend that. So as soon as I get the notes from that, I will forward that to the board so you can all review that as well as Kim and Warren. I would like to run and bring this in a point counterpoint thing, but as we look at this, SS4A is a new program that was established about 24 months ago out of the influx of funds that have been allocated from the federal government. So in that, you're not eligible for implementation funds if you don't have a plan. So that's kind of the first part of this, is that's whether we do anything with the plan or not. I'm not going to say it's irrelevant. That's not the right way to say it. But when we do anything with the plan or not, without a plan, we're not eligible for funding. That's all the communities, all the counties, all the governmental entities within the region aren't eligible for that funding. So do always keep in mind, the plan is versus funding. You can't have the other people's money without the plan in hand. whether it's a good plan, bad plan, or otherwise. So that it's all implementation focused. And to the best of my knowledge, at this point, and Randy, you did bring up a good point, when we look at next steps, as to where we go with this, is establishing, what are internal metrics to be able to track and follow, the implementation piece. Because at this point, in everything that I've read, everything I've been briefed on, Federal Highways has not established a tangible metric that, quantifies or qualifies fatality reductions, crash reductions. They're just saying it's a general safety plan. I mean, it's, it's kind of one of those things that just threw it out there because they had a big pot of money. And my personal opinion is those people that I call here echelons above reality, they want to be able to pat themselves on the back. They spend a bunch of money to support, local governments. Whether it has a positive effect or not, really wasn't a concern at the initial conception of the program. And so you're asking the right questions, and the people that are here will tell you they're not, they haven't thought that through. That's not, care. Yeah, I mean, it's we wanted to infuse money into, state and local governments more so than we're looking for a tangible outcome. And I forwarded it to you, Ryan. I hope you all got to see the email and kind of results of that first round. I did misspeak that I said Texas had nine projects. No, they didn't. They only had 5 that were approved. When I went back and double checked myself, out of the 70. And again, I will highlight that 2 of those came out of Bell County, a neighboring county. Not Bell County, McLennan County, a neighboring county. And again, not to beat the dead horse, but I feel like one of Coryell County's, downfalls in that was that we didn't have projects big enough. When you look at the dollar amounts that were being kind of dished out, we undercut ourselves, and at the federal level, they were going to have to do just as much paperwork and commit just as much manpower to approve a Coryell County, $1 million project as they were, McLennan County, $8 million project. It's kind of the cost benefit. So anyway, I'll stop there.
No, it's very helpful.
I will forward notes from what our, outcall was, feedback that we got from Fed Highways, because I do think that if this program is truly something that the region is committed to, and I think I said this previously, it's going to take a regional approach. Certainly, Killeen can come up with projects that, are in that right price range, if you will. Temple Belton area probably can do that same thing. But if you're talking about Milam Mill, Hamilton's, the outliers, they'll never get a dime out of this if there's not a regional approach. And I'm not saying it's got to be focused on them, but I'm just saying if this board is focused on regional safety, I'll let Killeen-Temple, the smart guys, figure it out. I'm just a master of the obvious, just pointing out that, hey, this program, much like all the federal programs that I've been involved with, is not specifically designed to support rural communities because the population isn't there, the cost benefit is not there. So I would even ask largers as, we hit those implementation levels, if you can partner with, one of the smallers, kind of, I don't know, take them under your arm, if you will. It benefits us all. That's the way I'll say it. It benefits us all. So, okay.
My conversation with Kimberly Horn, though, wasn't just the dollar amount. It was looking specifically about how dangerous those areas were. So you could dramatically reduce major accidents in the area, even if it was a smaller dollar amount, if it dramatically, aggressively whatever, decrease the number of accidents you had in your area. They're looking for the biggest bang for the buck to save lives. So with us prioritizing these, and I'd like to see McLean County's results just as much as I would Coryell County's results, see what they did right, and see how many people they showed, and how good a job they did of showing that they would reduce this number of fatalities or wrecks or whatever the case may be. So that Kimberly Horn can know that if these projects are the right projects, or if these projects are prioritized accordingly to have a better impact. Because obviously the feds are going to want the biggest bang for their buck. That's why they're going to prioritize all of these and try to save as many lives, hopefully, and not just spend as much money as we can as quickly as we can, but truly have an impact. Those are the kind of metrics that we were talking about earlier that I think they want, and I think we should be comparing with McLennan County or Coryell County and who applied for some of these already.
But no, you hit the nail on the head. I go back to what you want to call it, benefit cost analysis or cost benefit analysis. The bang for the buck, and that tends to lead towards population density.
Sure.
Exactly.
That's the, because and again, I'm just kind of going off of, what I recall, so don't quote the numbers, but from urban to rural in that whole the 70 implementation project, it was about, I think 75-25 to the urbans.
Yep.
Because they get more bang for the buck. And like I said, they're going to spend as much time and manpower and paperwork on a Coryell County project as they are a Los Angeles project. I mean, but if they can get rid of 25 million, in this amount of time and effort, again, it's kind of a pat themselves on the back thing to say, yes, we did get the money pushed out. That's kind of political.
But if you can show, and one can show with the metrics, that 10% of the rural, reducing by 10% with the population of X number versus the 10% of the population of X number in the urban area, that 10% is very similar. And you can show that with metrics if you're comparing the total populations.
No, indeed. And I mean, really, I think that's where the rurals would have an advantage. Because if you only have 2 fatalities a year, and I say I eliminated 2 fatalities a year, that means I've eliminated 100%
Exactly.
of my fatalities.
You've gone beyond the 50% mark.
Yes, and you only had to reduce 2.
Which represents 10% of the total, whatever, of the total population, and that's where the metrics come in.
Yeah. So
Picking numbers, obviously, off the shelf.
So I'll get those together. We had a county attorney and our vendor was sitting in, with Fed Highways. And as best as I can consolidate it, because I tend to get long-winded, imagine that. We'll push that out, so y'all can have a look at that. And, especially with Kimberly Horn, they can help us formulate a better plan.
I wonder if there's also, this might not make sense, but I wonder if there's also an opportunity to, in crafting the bills and when they're going through the legislative process, the concept of the Christmas tree bill, where what happens is you have a bill and all of a sudden people start attaching to that bill to get it approved. So it starts getting a bunch of branches off of it. It's called Christmas tree. I think what I'm potentially at least hearing or what's resonating with me is if we do them as individual projects, rural has a harder time competing because of the numbers. If we let a regional project that included rural as part of it, or like the construction installation of signals, maybe 20 in a city and 2 in rural county, but it's led as an entire project, then that project basically gets funded and gets approved because you're reducing total number of fatalities across. But maybe there's an opportunity to do something like that. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what I believe to be true at this, that if you just said, hypothetically, Gulfway, in Mills County wants to do a project. I am of the opinion that there's about a 99.9% chance they would never, ever get funded if Gulfway tries to put together a project. But if Gulfway has and Mills County has a couple of projects that are similar to Milo County, that are similar to Lampasas County, Coryell, and then you group those similar projects and let it as one overall, project, then I go to the other side, and I think you've got about a 99.9% chance of getting approved, because they want to be able to say that they're supporting the rurals. It's just their processes don't line up with small rural projects.
Well, getting a contractor to bid on a small project versus a project that has 20 smaller programs in it is probably a lot more attractive to bidders as well.
And it goes back to the cost benefit, because y'all tell me when to shut up, because I'll just keep yapping. One of the projects that I looked at was signage. It was, and I don't remember if that was in McLennan County, one of the McLennan County projects or not, but there was someone, and I'm almost positive it wasn't one of the Texas projects, that they were looking at just roadway signage. But there was about $4.5 million worth of signage, and it was a countywide thing, and it got approved. Now, if you were to, just say, I'll pick Oglesby in Coryell County. If Oglesby says we want to put up signage, well, that's about $700. There's no way Oglesby would ever get funded for a signage project. But if Coryell County says, okay, we're taking Oglesby, Evant, Jonesboro, all of our littles, and taking the signage as an overall, there is a very strong possibility that we get into that. And again, I'm just using that as one example, but I do recall on the approved list, and I do think it was one of the Texas projects, it was signage, which, so a lot of times we get focused on intersections and traffic flow, but just having signs out there is a method of improving, the safety. Okay, all right, sorry.
So James, is there a way we can have Dan kind of, I know at this point, a lot of what we've done is we use this regional approach to provide cities and jurisdictions their own individual, hey, these are the projects that we've identified. For Dan's team to go through all the projects that we've seen and see if there are some areas where there's overlap to identify actual some possible regional initiatives.
Yeah, I can mention that to him. I know he did mention to me, they're helping Little Rock NPO with their safety action plan. They were finished earlier and applied for funding as an NPO for a regional type project that you're mentioning in Little Rock, looking at multiple corridors and doing similar type things on like 5 or 6 different corridors, and they were approved.
Like pedestrian crossings is a common thing that has to do with signalization and signage. Those are projects that could be done across.
Right, so there definitely is a real life example of an NPO that applied for a regional project and was approved funding that Killeen worked with and helped. So I can definitely bring that up to Dan and look again at the project list and, maybe have a separate pull out or something that says, hey, these projects could be grouped together into one application for the SS4 implementation part of it.
Awesome. Thank y'all for indulging.
Thank you for the input.
No more caffeine for you.
Any more discussion or comments? James, thank you. This is an action item. Sorry, just discussion. Move on to item 7. Discussion item also regarding presentation on HCTV's microtransit services, page 36 through 40 in your booklet. Daryl.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. So, I don't know, Ryan, a while back, Ryan asked me to do a presentation for the TAC and Policy Board to give you just a reasonably quick update on how microtransit is going. And, you know, it's always hard to pick the right time to do that, but we feel like we've got enough data to show you a couple trends here now. So we wanted to move forward with that. So what I wanted to show you first is just more or less a 1 month comparison. You've heard me talk about the Fort Cavazos pilot project that we did. Highly successful, and it's still successful to this day. They're on track to do about 250,000 rides on base in the first 12 months. So I thought, well, that's a good starting point. And I think when you asked me to do this, Ryan, we had a month's worth of data, so I just pulled the month. For Fort Cavazos was March 2nd to March 31st, which represents 30 days of service, and then for urban, September 3rd and September 30, which represents 20 days because of holidays and things. But some of the key performance indicators that we're measuring is obviously ridership and wait times, ride times, et cetera. So this kind of shows you some comparisons here. Trips in the first month out of Fort Cavazos, 14,551. Total boardings on the microtransit, 16,000. So very similar type numbers starting off there. Wait times, 6 minutes versus almost 10 minutes. Average ride time, 10 minutes versus 17 minutes. Trip distance, 3 minutes versus 4.5 miles. On-time performance, 99% over at Fort Cavazos versus 84% in the region. By the way, keep in mind, Fort Cavazos, we have learned since then, Fort Cavazos is much more simple of an operation compared to the region. So our on-time performance is a little bit lower, but it is getting better. Cancellations, 23, 24% for Cavazos, 37, almost 38% at that point in time for the region. That's a very high cancellation rate. And one of the things that we've discovered is that the public has figured out that if they, if they book a trip, cancel it, book a trip, cancel it, book a trip, cancel it, thinking that they're going to move themselves higher in the queue, kind of like some of us do. We do a phone call, we get put on hold, and you've got too many minutes to wait. You just hang up, call them back later. But the same concept is going on here. So that's what's going on in that regard. The bottom one is great. Fort Cavazos, positive reviews, 97%. In the microtransit urban world, it's 90%. So very solid numbers across the board. We're happy with them. They are getting better. And I think we are tracking. I'm going to show you, the last slide I show you is going to show you the ridership projections, and that says a lot.
And everything we've heard, Fort Cavazos is very positive feedback on this. This is a great success story in partnership.
I personally feel like it's a success story. Now, I'm not blowing smoke at you. We have dropped some balls, and that's what this slide is about, and I want to be transparent about that. There are some instances where we just didn't know what we didn't know. There are some instances that we totally got overwhelmed. The first one up there, the call center, we were getting, the first day of the urban system, we were getting about, I think it was over 1,000 calls per hour for the first 4 or 5 hours, which totally overwhelmed our call center. And we had actually contracted the calling out to a vendor. They were totally overwhelmed as well. They were so overwhelmed, they just they hit the light switch, they just shut it off, which didn't help us. So we've had a long conversation with them about that. We've had several conversations. But to fix that issue, we've added personnel, we retrained the people at the call center. The call center has added more people. So we discovered the issue, we're doing our best to fix it, and it's gotten a lot better. Yes?
What was the cost?
It is a department in Spare Labs. Spare Labs is our software developer. They also started a department that is a call center to help things out. We have since learned that we are their largest client. We're not that big. So just in that, it's something that they just started this year. So they're learning, we're learning on that one. Staffing shortages and some miscommunications happened. We've had to streamline our pullout process, which has improved a lot. The first 2 days was a disaster, but it was quickly picked up on. It was just some miscommunications, honestly. We thought we had communicated well, but not there were different messages that went out depending on the people. There's a lot of balls in there, a lot of people involved, but we've got that. I think we had that under control again on day 3. So that has gone real well by streamlining the pull-out process. We've also redesigned our shift schedules to make things go a little smoother. High cancellation rates, I mentioned the biggest reason why we think we had so many cancellations going on. But that's really an education process, and we're continuing our travel training efforts. We started travel training for microtransit in January, and we're still doing it. I would have to go count up how many travel trainings we've done. Last time I counted them, it was well over 60. Going out, sending people out to do group training for different organizations. Notice a lot of them are check marks. The high cancellation one, I did not put a check mark in there. It's a box. Same thing on the outage of software, the servers. I don't feel like those are totally fixed yet, but we're well on our way. They've been identified. The outage of software servers, what we're talking about there, interestingly enough, are Spare's Texas servers. They have picked up a lot of business in Texas. And I had a conversation with their CEO 2 or 3 weeks ago, specifically about this issue. He agreed that they think they are being overwhelmed on their Texas servers. So they're analyzing that. They're putting additional servers in. So we've had a couple, and I think we've had 3 outages now. So the system will go down for 30 to 45 minutes kind of thing. That's just too many operators like ourselves and cards down in Austin, different people in Texas being on those servers. So they're fixing that. The design of the system and the zones, this is where I really feel like this is where we didn't know what we didn't know. We were advised to put multiple zones in various cities, and after working that system for a while, we discovered that actually I think we would be better off if we just did one big zone in each city. And so that's what we're doing there. I will say this, in defense of, on that one, that's also a Spare software issue, Spare Labs issue. However, in their defense on that one, I want to point out that we are innovating an industry right now. Little Old Hill Country Transit District really is innovating. What they are doing is they're taking an on-demand system, which is microtransit. Microtransit is on demand, and then historically we've had a fixed route system. Well, we still have some fixed routes. It's the commuter route going back and forth. But what they're doing, what we've asked them to do is take that side of the industry and this side of the industry, which are very expensive to operate 2 systems like that at once because it requires separate software, and bring them together. What we were hoping for was a smooth blending of those 2 sides of the industry. They kind of bounced off each other a few times, but we're making tremendous progress there. But so they're innovating that process. They're bringing both sides of the industry together to be able to operate it and implement the services with just one software package, which is incredibly less expensive. So that's the approach that we're doing. And I'm going to show you some of the things that we've discovered why. So this service area map is the first one we started September 3rd. We ran it through October 6th. October 7th, we switched to a different system. Let's just take Killeen. You've got 4 zones in Killeen plus Harper Heights attached to it, plus Fort Cavazos attached to it as well. Notice the note down here at the bottom, the trips are required to use the regional commuter, which is the big blue line all the way through the region, if the origin and destination are not in the same zone. So let's just take this green area in southeast Killeen. If you're staying in that green area, you can just take one, you don't have to get on the commuter system at all. You just take microtransit. But if you were to go from the green to the purple in the northeast corner there, you would have to, in theory, get on the commuter for a very, very short period, which was just inefficient. So we ditched that. We just didn't realize. So we've gone now to a system. You read the note at the bottom, the trips will now only require the use of the regional commuter if the origin and destination are not in the same city. So anywhere in Killeen, they can take a microtransit. They only need to get onto the commuter if they're going to a different city. And we implemented that on October 7th, and what is the date today? 16th. So it's only been going for a week and a half, 2 weeks here, but already we've seen an improvement in that area, a lot less confusion going forward. This is just the ridership graph for Fort Cavazos. It just reflects I just updated this yesterday, so I wanted to show a couple more weeks on it. And you can see 9 weeks there. That same graph is on this one, but we've overlaid the urban system as well. So the blue is Fort Cavazos, representing 9 weeks, and the green is the microtransit system in the urban region, and that is representing five weeks of service. So in both cases, very successful. We're on track to, right now, well, I'll say it this way. We have already hit a point where we're picking up everyone who was previously riding in the fixed route system. So, we're doing 280 to 300,000 people per year under the fixed route system, and we are on track to have those more or less that same number right now on the system. But we're also wanting to advance beyond that, and we are tracking. The dotted line shows the progression there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that individual trips or individual people that could be taken on?
Those are passenger trips.
Okay.
So if you
I ride twice that day.
If you ride twice that day, that's 2 trips.
Yes.
That's industry standard for reporting.
Okay.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Hey, you answered my question. The first question, compared to the fixed system, have we seen an increase in usage? I know.
We're neck and neck on the previous system to what we're doing right now. But it is still trending forward quite a bit. And we are still having some issues with our software. Honestly, once that software gets dialed in, fine-tuned, I think you're going to see a significant drop-off in cancellations, and then you will see more riders getting on.
So as a national standard, when you make a major change, even in one route, you'll tend to see a drop-off in ridership, even if it's an improvement in the route, because it's just a change. And it can take 6 months to a year for you to get back to where you were, and then after that year, it starts improving. So planners typically fundamentally understand we're gonna see a reduction. It's no different than construction around a restaurant that's been there forever. Everybody knows the restaurant's there, but just because traffic patterns have to change, they'll see a drop off in their retail.
Yeah,
But what's impressive, why we're confident, is literally in 5 weeks, we've already washed away it's not been 6 months or a year, it's been 5 weeks, and we're already carrying what we were carrying before.
right.
So there's gonna be and the same thing happened with Fort Cab, is it started, and it was kind of slow, and then all of a sudden it just took off on us.
Yeah. So with seeing that growth, and people are probably starting to hear about it, I know like in the to a more southern part of Killeen, as people start to move in that area, folks not wanting to drive, in the anticipation coming to either us or any other jurisdiction about expanding, like replacing the Uber system with, and actually that's a good idea to use Uber because it's cheaper going to y'all than doing Uber ourselves, but to expand that, to flop it out, or is it cost effective, still just use Uber?
We are using Uber as just to simplify the concept, we've subcontracted Uber.
Right.
And so in Killeen, every day, I guarantee you, at 2:30 in the afternoon in Killeen, our buses will start, they are buses, Mayor. Our vans, I agree with you, that's fine. Our vans will start running a little bit behind schedule. We'll open them up. I think Raymond and I got together one day and was looking at about 2:30-ish. We had one vehicle running 62 minutes behind schedule, another one 30 minutes, another one 20-some minutes. So, it happens. What we're trying to do is to bring Uber in as, call it staff augmentation, if you will. So they will come to our rescue. They're our relief valve, if you will. And it's working. But we're discovering that Uber doesn't have as much capacity as what we kind of thought they did. So we are in the discussions with Uber about bringing in more capacity into the region as well. So we're still fine tuning this to get the balance right, but the numbers are good.
We'll always want to have Uber as a backup. What we should be dealing with is the peak demand, the off-peak, having staff where the productivity isn't as high is actually more expensive than to have Uber come in for an hour to pick up some individuals. The other thing is when we're still, again, there's a lot of like harmonics, so there's a lot of tuning that we need to do so that when a vehicle falls behind, because we've also included, one of the things that we've done that never gets talked about in the industry is when you talk about ADA folks, they've always been at a disadvantage, even though that the FTA requires comparable service and we ran paratransit on top of fixed route. The utopia situation is where everybody's treated equal. So everybody has the same access to same vehicles. They can ask for a trip immediately, just like everybody else, and get taken where they need to go. So we've included that, and we've integrated into these vans. We have vans that have wheelchair capabilities. Sometimes those vehicles that go and pick up an ADA client, those are the ones that will fall behind 40, 50, 60 minutes just because of the wait time, the additional wait time, and getting them on. But the system should dynamically take people that are waiting and push them over to Uber or to one of our other vehicles. And so those are some of the tweaks that we're making so that no one's ever waiting more than 30, 40 minutes for the ride. And just bear in mind that our fixed route service, everybody, it was 1 hour. And in many cases, you're going in the wrong direction from where you wanted to go. And you had to walk to go get to the bus stop. So vast improvements.
And I would say, for the last, when we first started, I had to tell, because my constituents, hey, you're going at least 3 months to knock out the kinks before you start saying, complaining.
We appreciate that because we do still have some kinks, right? We are waiting on that ADA issue right now. We've got 9 more ADA capable vehicles coming in during the month of October, but they're not here right now. So those folks are having to wait a little bit longer right now until we can get some additional.
But that be potentially becoming a sub, let's say, an additional, a separate service on top of the main service. You can just continue to.
They have additional space for multiple wheelchairs. The ones that we have right now have one wheelchair space. We'll have 9 more that have 2 wheelchair spaces. So it'll just be more efficient, so that vehicle can take 2 people at a time, so 1 person.
That can beat up the most from the seniors because we don't have a silver line anymore.
You know, back to the Ubers as well. That's another thing that we are still trying to fine tune. One of the things we didn't know what we didn't know. Well, the Uber concept is great, subcontracting Uber to come in for us, but especially a lot of our previous, or our existing ridership and people that we were carrying before, they pay with cash. Uber doesn't take cash. So that was another wrench that got thrown into the machinery. But we're working with our software vendor, developer to fix that. So there's a few of these things that we're repairing, but we are well on our way. This is going to succeed. I know it. In fact, Killeen, I got a call a couple days ago from somebody who's planning to come to the November 5th, I think, Killeen meeting to complain about some stuff. And you know what? We looked that guy up on it. He's one of the guys who books and cancels, books and cancels, books and cancels. Yeah, he did that 10 times in a row one day. And, so you have to take those complaints with a grain of salt, but we will get this fine tuned. But even right now, as early as it is, it's still successful. I mean, that 90% positive review rate says a lot. In fact, I think it's higher right now. Yes, Anita?
Yes, I was just wondering, how is the maintenance going on road trips you do?
I'm sorry,
How is the vehicle maintenance?
Oh, we are putting a lot more miles on those vehicles than what we had originally planned. In fact,
At
Fort Cab, correct. We're putting, I think it was around 17% more miles on at Fort Cab than what we had anticipated. The vehicles themselves are operating fine. It's a driving environment and a lot of stops and starts, so I would say we're going through brakes a little quicker than what we anticipated. But overall, it's going well. Yes.
Thank you.
As you're approaching your ridership numbers, if I understood correctly, you're getting pretty close to what you were doing before you changed over to this service.
Yes.
What are your operational cost comparisons? Are you seeing some efficiencies now? I mean, I know it's still early and you're still working.
It's early and we are seeing some efficiencies, but not as much as what we're targeting. I think once we get the software working the way we want it to work all the time, you'll see a lot more cost efficiency.
Well, actually, our operating efficiencies are superior to where we were before. So just to give you an example, our frequency on fixed routes, I mentioned before, was hourly, and it was in one direction. Okay, we're less than 20 minutes of wait time, so 3 times better. Your travel distance is less than, it's a little bit over 4 miles. Your total travel time is about 17 to 18 minutes.
And I'm talking about your operational costs.
So operational costs the costs are equal to our operational costs before. So we had 0 increase in our budget year over year, which means we actually have efficiencies built in because we're able to give employee raises, we have insurance, we have all those other things that everybody has. So typically you see about a 2.5 to 3% increase in costs. We did not raise any of that. We are covering more miles and hours, but we have more miles and hours of service. So it's hard to compare apples to apples because it's not. We're doing curb to curb service as opposed to you having to walk to a bus stop. So there's trying to compare the cost to a fixed route system is hard to do because you have to also think about the improvements in the system that make it more accessible to everybody. And we have built-in capacity, so the expectation is that we should be carrying about 650,000 passengers in our first year. We're carrying, we're projected to carry about 280,000, right? Just based on what we're seeing, like if you took today's number and you multiply it by 256 days, you get the same level of ridership that we have in the past, but that's only 5 weeks in. So the capacity for the system to carry more people is much higher. And so that when you look at your unit of measure is, there's a lot of statistics that we can bore you with from the National Transit Database, but there's cost per mile, cost per hour, cost per passenger, all these cost numbers that actually improve with higher levels of service for the same amount of money. So if that helps.
Oh, I think that's imperative. So
Yeah.
When these cities are selling this to their folks that are paying the taxes that the cities are spending to pay for this.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've seen in the cities local. There has been an idea that the cities aren't getting enough for what they're paying. And it seems to me like, and I'm just delivering numbers and all that too, and I've also kind of been up to the riders as much as the cities saying, give them a few months to work this out, let's see if it works.
Yeah.
Because we've had some pushback from some of the cities saying, hey, we're not sure this is of value to us. We might have other alternatives. So I just want to see the value so that when you go back to those cities in 6 months or whatever the case may be, you're showing that cost per, whether it's cost per rider or cost per mile or whatever it is, that you can show that this is actually better than what you had before.
It is.
And it's superior to anything else you can go get.
Yeah, we already know it's better than what we were doing before.
That's what I was.
But it's still not as good as what we're targeting in terms of cost.
Yeah.
And another thing that kind of comes into play, not so much cost, but ridership per hour. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. Fort Cavazos is off the chart. Those guys are tracking about 10 passengers
No,
per
actually
service.
20 is what, we're getting closer to 20.
Up to 20, that's right.
So that's typically what you would see on a fixed route.
Which is unheard of.
But Fort Cavazos is different because it's like it's a very dense city with high demand.
And if they don't ride, they get to run where they need to go.
Yeah. But Fort Cavazos is off the chart. You compare that to the urban system in terms of passengers per service hour. We're bouncing around 5 at that point, but our on-demand in the old system was 2.2. So it's double right there. So we are getting these efficiencies, which translates into cost savings, which we have already achieved some of, but our target is a lower.
To your earlier point, cities lead with that.
Pardon?
When you present this to the cities, lead with that.
Yeah,
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, I think we spent too much time talking about all the negatives and not all the positives. Because
I think it was important for you to do that because we deal with the folks that just have the negatives. Because when you talk about the negatives, you pointed out where you fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that negative is often a comparison between a non-rider who is a taxpayer saying, why should I pay for so-and-so who is a rider? And then you've got the comparison of X number of taxpayers versus X number of riders.
So what you typically hear in transit, and we were hearing this, the Hill Country Transit District hired a consultant several years ago, and they went out independently and met with stakeholders and heard, typically what you hear in a lot of places around transit is, well, nobody's riding the system, doesn't go where we want to go, it's too hard to get to it. There's, shelters there's not enough shelters, so when it's hot, when it's raining, when it's, cold, all those things, people are inconvenienced, and we're not carrying enough people, right? And it's hard to use, and people are confused, and no one's using it, so that's a lot of negative. And I think with this system is, well, it literally picks you up at the curb and takes you to the other curb, so you're not having to walk anywhere, you're not having to shelter out at a bus stop that much less a shelter, but literally stand in the wind and the rain and the heat and all that stuff. You're not having to do that anymore because it's picking you up at the curb. So you can wait in a retail shop, a coffee shop, McDonald's, or at your house and wait for that vehicle to get to you. So all of these negative connotations around transit have really gone away with this system. And we need to do a better job of presenting not only the challenges that we're having, but the benefits of what the system is actually going to provide. And transit is very much infrastructure. It's no different than roads and utilities, and people don't think about it that way. But it is any robust growing area, anywhere in the world will tell you that there's a percentage of folks that need to be able to get around to work at McDonald's, to work at Starbucks, that don't have cars. Kids need to get to soccer practice, the parents are both working. It is very much a quality of life thing that businesses look for. If you talk to Greg Abbott's Economic Development Group, they'll tell you one of the top 10 things that businesses look for in relocations, probably the top 6, is mass transit. Mass transit education, schools, good schools, areas to build. But transit is a really important thing, and if you do it right, it could be a big economic generator. So thank you for your time, because I know this is going a little bit long.
Yeah, you didn't go any longer than I did.
I do want to point out, there's the positive, there's the negative. We're just being transparent and showing you both. But there's the green line, there's where we're going, and that's where we're headed, and that's the future. As that continues to climb, and give us a little more time on the software, I think you're going to see those negatives dial down.
Daryl rang me one. At this point, are we tracking, or do we have the ability to start tracking point of origin Fort Cavazos versus off of Fort Cavazos, and then point of origin outside of Fort Cavazos to Fort Cavazos? Because I think that long term, that may play into the strategy of what that cost analysis is that we charge Fort Cavazos, and the economic benefit to our local communities. So are we tracking that?
Yeah, in many ways, yes.
All the data's there, it's just a matter of presenting the data, because every origin and destination is in our data set. It's just a matter of how we want to start using it. But I would say that folks have not figured out how to use it yet, right? They're starting to. They recognize they're starting to get around. We're starting to carry everybody that we did carry. We need to do, it's almost like a series of waves. The first wave is a massive tsunami, which was get everything deployed in 5 cities across a massive geography simultaneously. That's really hard to do. Even the software company that works with Cat Metro, Dallas Area Rapid Transit, and Trinity Metro, some of the largest transit agencies in the world, have not done what we're asking them to do because of the way we've set up our entire system. And get this, they're making all those changes for 0 cost. How often do you see that happen in a software company, right? For 0 cost, because they see the competitive advantage that this brings to them around the world. So we already received 1 innovation award from the state of Texas. I don't think we're going to get an innovation award, and the software company is going to make a lot of money. But one of the things that we're trying to impress in our DNA is just because you're small doesn't mean you can't be innovative and impactful. So I think it's going to take a little time for us to get all this worked out. Their CEO and their head of development are excited about this. I literally said this, I'm sorry, but I said, hey, do you want your product to be, I probably shouldn't say it. Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want a half-ass product or do you want a badass product?
There you go.
I said, well, this is what's gonna take to get it there, and they agreed. So they're hopeful that they'll have it by the end of the year, with all the bells and whistles, and things will get a lot better. But people are trying, and they are suffering a little bit, they're trying to figure out how to use the system. And once they do, then, and this is very standard, within about 6 months, we'll see large increases in ridership. And if not, then we need to tweak the system. And what we built gives us tremendous ability to ramp up and ramp down, to offload to Uber, and to scale the way we need to. It's like the maximum flexibility that we have. And it's all been, the infrastructure's been put in place. We just need a little bit of time for people to get
used to use the system.
Carol, thank you. Any other comments? I will move on to item 8. Are we skipping 8 today?
Well, yeah, staff have asked for a presentation from TechDOT, not Victor. So if everybody's looking at Victor. I've reached out to the folks in Austin to see if we could get Carolyn Mays to provide an update on the state's transportation, any updates we can get from them. I'll continue to bring this forward. We just haven't been able to find a time where the policy board meets that she's available to present. So we'll keep working on that, and that way she can come and provide an update to as what the state's doing as a whole, and the importance of the NPO in those activities.
But you would still point the finger at Victor.
You can. That's why the room's designed like this.
Okay, moving on to item 9, discussion item regarding the public input received through September 2024, pages 44 through 47. Anita.
Yes, thank you. One thing I'd like to clarify, originally when we were talking about the proposed amendments and the public comments that I received over at the area agency expo and the HOP, I had mentioned that those comments probably would have been received without the gift card, but that I misspoke. What I meant to say is that they would not have been received without those gift cards. So I wanted to clarify that. But moving on to our current public comments, a lot of the public comments that we received this month, I believe there were 28 of them, are in parts to the proposed amendment, because I had divided those up and I allowed individuals and citizens to comment on what was important to them. So those were the 28. This is a list by jurisdiction. Looks like the city of Hucker Heights had the most comments, and then I have it outlined by the source of the comment, and you can see that we had the online survey and the presentations. During the public meeting, I allowed individuals to use a QR code, so I wanted to highlight the difference between the surveys were the exact same, but how we obtained the information was different. And in regards to the actual comments that were received for our community, we received 28 total comments. Of those comments, I want to point out 3 which are in the packet. They're not going to be in this PowerPoint. The 3 that I would like to speak about are 2 were regarding the Hill Country Transit Micro District, and I really want to give props to the HOP once again, because they responded to those comments quickly, and they got their the citizens where they needed to go, and a few of those citizens, it was medical appointments, so I appreciate that. And then the third comment that I wanted to highlight, this was actually by telephone, and it was right after a fatality crash. I think it was on Loop 363. The citizen wanted to know about what was going to be happening with the future of Loop 363 near north of US 190 and State Highway 95 interchange, and he wanted a detailed map. So we went over the MTP 2050 project listing, and I highlighted the MPO ID in which he was referencing, and he was very happy to hear that it was in the project listing. However, he's a little bit disappointed that it's not till 2030. And then he also wanted a copy of the detailed map, so I sent him over to Michael Yates to receive that. The other comments are in relation to that the public comment period. This right here is shows by comment, safety continues to be a high priority for our citizens, as well as public transit. And then public comment by activity, that once again shows the different places where we receive those public comments at the pop-up meetings, the public meeting social media, business hours and websites, and then public comment by topic, which it's a little bit difficult for me to tell since this is not in color. I'm sorry about that, y'all. But do y'all have any questions about our public comments this month?
No comments? Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 10, Director's Update, page 50 through 52, Ryan.
It's finally my turn. Thank you all for being here. Just want to reiterate, this is the last meeting of the year, unless something comes up. So I hope you have a good couple of months until January, and even after that possibly. We do have the upcoming meetings listed on the screen and in your packet. The next meeting is October 22nd for the Freight Advisory Committee, and that's at 2:30. The rest of the meetings you can see are advisory groups until January, when the January 8th Technical Advisory Committee will meet, and the 22nd we have the Policy Board meeting. Other updates, last month staff attended the AMPO annual conference. That's the national conference. We were in Salt Lake City. Staff attended many sessions. During our time there, we met a lot of interesting vendors that have been knocking on the door. But the biggest thing that I'd like to bring to the table for this is, as part of the policy committee, we did start talks for the 2026 federal legislative reauthorization for transportation funding. I know it's 2 years out, but it's going to be a very long process. AMPO has a roadmap out for what our legislative priorities look like. If you're interested, I'm happy to share that with everybody. It's on their website. But this is a process that's going to take a couple of years. We meet monthly. The AMPO policy committee meets monthly to discuss this, and we'll continue to discuss it. So that's something that is coming down the pike. It's just going to be a process. October 30th, we have our Central Texas Public Transportation Summit. What location is that going to be in, James?
It's going to be a conference call at the Civic Center.
If you haven't seen information for that come out and you'd like it, please let me know. We're happy to share it. The HSIP project call was released. The deadline is October 30th. There is a 10% local match for those. In the packet and attached with some of your emails, there is a readiness and environmental protection integration grant flyer. Kara Escajeda with Texas Parks and Wildlife was hoping she could present this information to the policy board today, but she was unavailable. She will actually be presenting it to the CICOG Executive Committee if you'd like to show at that meeting as well, if you'd like to be there. But all that information for that program is in the flyer that's attached. The other couple things I have that aren't listed in here are, this is the 50th year of KTMPO. We were designated in 1975, so 50 years going strong. I'm not sure exactly if we'll have any type of special event, but I anticipate we'll be doing some type of a social media campaign at least, explaining what the NPO is and what we've done for the region over the past 50 years. And I know the other big thing is, I spoke on this the past couple of meetings that I've been able to attend. Our planning dollars, that funding formula hasn't been revised since 2006. The work group that I was on to address funding concerns for some of the smaller NPOs as well as us met, and we finalized all of our recommendations to the state. Unfortunately, like I said before, some of these smaller NPOs, much smaller than us, didn't have enough funding to actually keep the lights on. So in order to bring them up to a current level that sustains the NPO, which is required by federal law, The Texas MPO work group for the funding formula met, and we have recommended that their base be raised from $180,000 a year to $375,000. But with that being said, Killeen-Temple MPO will experience a reduction in funding. We're looking at possibly, originally it looked like it was going to be about $80,000 the first year. At this point, with new numbers that have come out, it looks like we are going to, when this implementation goes into place in FY25, we will experience a $20,000 decrease in funding, and then the next funding year will be kind of right back where we are now and continue to move forward. So it's not that big of an impact for us. It's something we definitely can absorb. We have sufficient carryover balances, and we've planned accordingly with staff and salaries, because that's really what those dollars are for. So I anticipate that impact will be minimal, but I say all that to say you will see a UPWP amendment come before you in the January, February timeframe, because we will be required to amend our 2-year UPWP that had old dollars on it. The last thing I have is the air quality readings, which were 60 and 54 parts per billion. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
No questions? Thanks. Member comments in general? With that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 11:10. Remember, we're not meeting until January. 3 holidays in between. Everybody have a good